Merry Christmas and welcome back to JWC Podcast. I bet that you have been missing us so much from last week, and today we'll continue with episode 2 of the topic Who is Christ to you? It may be a bit late to say Merry Christmas right now, but at JWC, Christmas has never ended. But first, let's do some recap for those who haven't listened to last week's episode. We have touched on John's story of how he was born into a Christian family and growing up looking at God as his father figure. This week, we're going to continue with Ron's story of how he turned from a rebellious, young adult, teenage years into a mature man of faith in God. And I'm so excited for the next part. Have you got your seatbelt on? Let's go.
Then I had to start praying, and the rest of that trip, I was the leader of this trip. I would consult with people I respected in the different cities where we went to do our ministry, and every one of them said the same thing: yes, this would be God's will. And so that was in February of 2017. And so I went home and got all my affairs in order. In July of 2017, I moved here.
Yes.
And other than some short visits home, I've been here ever since. And
Amen.
I just feel like, God has really prospered different ministries for me.
Amen.
I'm still looking for more things that God wants me to do.
Correct.
But it's been a long journey.
For me, it's also a bit different from you too, because I didn't grow up in a Christian family.
Yeah.
And surrounding me, there's now many Christians too. Before I was a Christian, I got into fights with my Christian friends. Because we were in science class. I'm a bit of a science person too.
Yeah.
So we were discussing about evolution, Charles Darwin, that kind of stuff. Being an atheist myself, keep finding it's just evolution. It's just nature. It's nothing related to God.
Okay.
But then years later, I become a Christian myself, and then looking back, what did I just say?
How did you become a Christian?
For me, it's when I was in desperation, and I was just testing things out. Because in science, there were 5 steps to test if something is real or not. So you make a hypothesis, and then you test thing out, you analyze it, get the results, and then make conclusion.
Yeah.
So that's how I did with God too. So I make hypothesis. Okay, so if God is real, right, then He must have answered my prayer.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
So, and then next step, I test it out. So I I pray to God. Actually, I did it to Buddhism too. So I pray to Buddha, but the conclusion is that nothing is answered. My prayer never answered, and I don't feel any change in my life actually happened after I prayed to Buddha. Then when I moved to Christianity, I specifically prayed to Jesus himself. I named the God that I prayed to.
Yeah.
And then I did the 5 step. I pray, and then I get my answer, and I conclude that
This is real.
He's real. This is no joke, Because before that, I was making some kind of
assumptions,
determination too. If He answered my prayer, because it sounds really impossible for the prayer to be answered at that time. So I was if He answered my prayer, I have no choice but to believe that He's real, and I have to follow Him.
Correct.
And it's kind of like that. But even after I say that, I still backslide Him, and then didn't keep up to what I said.
Correct.
But then little by little, He built up my faith. It wasn't I wake up one day and then I become Christian now. Yeah, let's do it.
It's kind of funny because you apply basically scientific process into determine if God is real or if God is not real. And that's fascinating because all of the scientists that I've heard of, and I've read their books or I've listened to them talking, they always say talking about fact-based kind of belief. And here you are, you have applied it at a very young age and you get it. But they are in their 40s, 50s, 60s. They are still applying that process and still arguing that God is not real, there is no God. Ron, about your relationship with your dad prior to the moment where you received Christ, Can you describe how the relationship changed when you received Christ? I mean, you both received Christ on the same day.
So in my case, I was the oldest.
Okay.
And so my dad was very demanding.
Mm.
And he was a hard worker. He would go and do his job, and then when he came home, we lived on a small farm, and he would go out then and do farm work till the light, we didn't have any light anymore.
Mm.
And I didn't have the same motivation. Sports were everything to me, and I frustrated him.
It's like Esau,
I frustrated him, and so it was hard. My younger brother was much more like Dad, and he was, liked to get his hands dirty and do things and stuff, and so he was always closer with Dad. But that last 6 months, even though we weren't together all the time,
Correct.
I felt a lot more peace about being in his presence and so on. And obviously that was the work of God. It had nothing to do with me or my dad. It was just how God was doing that. And it was like God was allowing a wound to be healed before he took my dad away.
Isn't that amazing that when we allow God, or when we submit to God, and when God restores, even much more?
Right.
Even though we struggle before God restores, like, God, where are you? What are you doing? But when it comes to restore, His restoration is not like the human restoration that will repair a motorbike. He restores, like, He brings it all together, and it becomes fresh, becomes new. Yeah.
And once we've been through that process a few times, we learn better to wait on God, to trust God, to leave things in His hands, because we made a mess.
Correct.
And God's going to come in and help us take care of that.
He always redeems what's lost, and whatever we think that is wasted, if we put it into His hands, it's not going to be wasted. It's going to be utilized to its best.
Even though we think, oh, this is bad, He has a way of changing things around. Personally for me, because I don't consider myself running away from God, but I would say sometimes I rebel against His will. For example, let's say someone is doing something bad, because I realize that this person is behaving so badly or is doing something that's not okay, I try to distance myself. But then when God is putting in my heart, like, you've got to be friends with this person, you've got to reach out to him and say, no, I don't want to do that. Because he or she is not in a position where he wanted to say, okay, I'm done with what I'm doing, I want it to be good, or I want it to change. So I tend to be like that. And sometimes that could lead me to be like, stay away, not praying, or not wanting to have conversation with the Lord. Even though I know that I'm going to be miserable during the period that I don't want to pray, or I don't want to just listen. And I specifically remember a time I was making different decisions about my future. Okay, I'm going to leave Vietnam. I wanted to go somewhere else. I want to scale up in my academic career as opposed to my work experience or life and so on. But then I realized every time I'm trying to make those decisions, while I'm making decisions maybe going to the left, God is pushing me to the right. And at some point, I specifically told God, like, you know what? I don't want you to make any decision for me. I will make my own decision, and I'm not going to listen to you. This is literal. This is me having conversation with God. Like, you don't say anything. Let me make decision and handle stuff the way I wanted to handle it. What you are telling me, I don't like it. Not that it's not possible, but I don't like it. This is me that God has been by my side, walked me through so many things, and what should I do? Later on, I realized I couldn't disconnect myself from Him, and He would not disconnect Himself from me, because even while I say, God, shut up, I don't want to listen to you, there is still His voice coming to me whenever I want to do something, even something small, and I feel like it's just Him telling me that you can't push me away. I will always be here, and I will always be saying what I wanted to say to you. He has always been there. And sometimes I rebel against His will, but He never chastised me for that, but rather bless me to be patient with me. Yeah.
Actually, I was reading Ezekiel 2.
Yeah.
And then Ezekiel was like the prophet during the Babylonian exile.
Correct.
And he was the one to say that God is going to punish the Israel people.
Yeah.
The conclusion is that they're not going to listen to him. But he's always there,
Yeah.
It's his faithfulness.
Yeah.
So even though they reject the
Wow.
prophet, they
Wow.
reject what he says, he's still going to
He's
say
still
it.
going to be
He's
saying.
still gonna
He's going to say what he wants to say.
So that at the end, they cannot say, they don't have the excuse to say that I didn't know God well.
Yeah,
because
because
he's been saying
He
to
has
me,
been
just don't
saying,
listen.
even through your own people.
Yeah.
Well, John, I smile because my experience is so much different than yours. I fought God when I was young.
Yeah.
And as I grew and got into working for him and stuff, he revealed to me things that I didn't know about myself. And I am not very good with heights, high places,
Right. Right.
But so what I do in my mind, I picture myself on a high cliff, high cliff. You almost can't see the bottom.
Right.
And then just stepping out into the unknown, knowing that God's going to catch you.
Catch me.
And that's kind of my whole philosophy of life right
that is
now.
powerful.
It's just let God make the decisions. I'm here. I'm a soldier.
I recognize that what John says, what I confirm to be true the whole time, is that God's going to reveal who you are,
Yep.
as you walk with him. So you're not just knowing God better, you're knowing
yourself better.
too.
Yeah. In the line with what you said about you putting your mindset on a high, very high, tall places, then you sort of like stepping out in faith from my teenage years into my 20s and then a young adolescence and growing up. I remember then that I was just like that. If someone speak to me, oh, God wants you to go to this place, I don't care. I'm going. I remember specifically one time I was working for a small company, cyber cafe, and after 10 p.m. I stayed behind. And that time back in Nigeria, there is a lot of robbery. It's still happening now, but not as many as then. And those thieves killing people. So the security in my area has already warned everyone by 10:30 or 11. You guys should be in your house. No one should be walking outside. If you catch anyone walking outside, then we're going to stop you. We're going to interrogate you. And interrogation may go as fierce as getting beaten. But then I stay up really late because I always have this mindset that if God is for me, who can be against me? And because I'm a child of God, I will go anywhere I want to go and no one will be able to stop me. So when I finished my work on that day and I was going home, the guy that's supposed to drop me said, oh, we are going to a different place. Okay.
Oh, now it turns into a horror movie, walking alone at night, having nobody around you, changing into a place that you don't know well. What will happen to our Joan? Let's wait to see what happened in episode 3 of next week. To end the episode today, I would invite you and encourage you to pour out your heart to Jesus. It doesn't matter how far we have run away from Him, no matter how big the mistake in our past. Every day is a fresh start for us to purify our heart and be with God once again, because He has always been waiting for us to go back, to run back to Him. Please like, subscribe, or leave any comment, because your response means a lot to us. Let us end today with the song Purify My Heart by Jeremiah Riddle. Enjoy!
And purify my heart, cleanse me from within. Lord, make me holy. Lord, purify my heart, cleanse me from my sin. Deep within, and treat